cold night. I'm glad to see everybody out. Pleasantly surprised, actually. So, as usual, I see some things up here. For you who have not been here before, people bring stuff and they place it up here, and I just sort of say, this item here, and who wants to talk about it? Who started this right here on the end?
I'd like to be the last.
Oh, you see, they're complaining already. In that case, we'll stroll down to the, how about right here in the center? These items here. Which one's which? That one's yours. Okay, Don.
Just move this over here.
Thanks.
As you know, what I have here, most of you have seen these before, it's an iron. It's an old iron, probably from the 1800s, and it was used up, as far as I know, to the late 40s, what I can remember. And this is a stand here, so the iron gets put on the stove now and heats up. Now, the reason why I know about this is because in the late 1940s, after the Second World War, when my father came home, he decided to buy a farm. Now, the farm was on Weston Road, just south of Steeles, backing onto what is now 400. They took 10 acres off the back of the farm for 400. Anyway, I was just a little boy, about 4 years old then, and when they bought the farm, there was no hydro, no plumbing. We had an outhouse, we had a well there, pump well, and there was a stove in the kitchen. And I think it was a Renfu stove for cooking. And my mother, even though she was brought up with electricity and with an iron net, she had to use one of these to iron the clothes. Now, what happens is you take this, you put it on the stove, and it disconnects. And you might have about 3 or 4 of these on the stove. So when you're ready to, that should connect in there. When it's hot, you take it, you use it on your, whatever you're ironing, and you have one of these on the side so it doesn't burn the table or a cloth or whatever it is. Now, so they were quite handy. I think it was in the late 1800s they started having electric irons. Actually, they had another iron that only lasted a few years. It was a gas iron and had a unit at the back, and you could put kerosene or whatever it in, light it up. Well, those were dangerous. They could cause fires and all sorts of things. Jim knows that. And then after that, I think it was near the end of the 1800s, they started with electric, and electric came up through the 1900s. Now, this farm that we were at, I'll just tell you a little bit about that. After about 6 months, my father, he actually put some wiring in the house so we could get rid of the wood-burning stove. The house was 100 years old, by the way, when we moved in. And the plumbing, he got that done. So my mother could go back to the electric, and so these were forgotten about. Now this one here wasn't hers. I liked it so much a number of years ago that I had to buy one at one of these antique shops. And just as a reminder. Now, just to carry on, that house, when we moved from there in 1953, 53 into 54, my parents sold the property, because then there was 100 acres, to a developer. Now that house, being about 110 years old then, the developer donated it to Black Creek Pioneer Village where June
Oh, really?
used to work.
Oh, which one? What's it called?
I don't know,
Not Berwick, it's not Berwick.
no, but anyway, the boards were this wide, and they had pegs, you know, and it was a house that maybe they just used bits and pieces of it, I'm not sure, but it was donated to Black Creek Pioneer Village when it was starting up. So there's quite a history from an iron to the house that it was used in.
So did they move it to there, or was that the site?
No, they moved it, and I should tell you, the house was, on the outside, it was all white, just like a rough type of white.
Stucco?
Like a stucco, yeah. Now, my father, I remember, he wanted to put another window in the kitchen. The kitchens were huge rooms. And so I remember him trying to cut through the wall, and he found out that it was like planks about this wide. It was almost like a log house, but there were planks on planks, and then they put a stucco on the outside. So that's the way they built them back in, say, the 1840 something, you know, when they built it. So it was really interesting, and this brings back the memories of that place. Okay.
It's great, thanks, Tom.
Sorry, could it be Mackenzie?
I don't know. I haven't been there in such a long time, but
Because the Mackenzie house, like you come into, it's like a parlor you come into. It's not a very big house really.
yeah.
You come into the parlor and then on one side.
No, it wouldn't be that
We had a
one.
watchmaker who was in there and he was interpreting his career, what he was doing. And then you went down a little step and then there's another room and there was a big stove in
Yeah,
there.
wouldn't be, unless they used it, June, bits and pieces of it to reconstruct. Did they do that, reconstruct?
Yes, they did ours.
They did?
Changed it, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a log house, they moved it to Brampton to
But that's Brampton, this is Black Creek Pioneer.
This is Black Creek. It was donated to Black Creek, so
this was donated to.
that's all I know. Maybe you could find
I'd
out.
love to find it, but I don't know.
Yeah, the people we bought it from, last name was Loves. And it's funny, a friend of mine who I met in 1964, Cliff and Joan Love, which you would know them. You know them?
Yes.
Yes.
They have an old, well, they're into old cars, but.
Yes, it was his uncle's farm. And Cliff, he turned 90 years old last November. I was at his birthday party. And he told me, when he was a little boy, there was a fireplace there with one of those arms that goes out to put a pot on and that. And there's a stairwell, he went up over that, it was like an attic over at the top. He used to go up there and play as a little kid, and I said, guess what? I did the same thing when we had that farm. So it was kind of nice, you know. Anyway, so much for this. More on that.
Oh, nice long journey with that. That's great.
Yeah.
Great, right on, thanks, Tom. How about the bull figurine?
Oh, here.
Perfect, cheat notes, I understand. If you want me to hold it or hold the cheat note, I can do either.
Oh, yeah.
I can do that.
All right, so what we have here is a Jackfield type pottery. It's a cow creamer pitcher with gilded decoration circa 1860. Yes, so it was willed to us from Brian's mother, Sarah Riley. The Jackfield type pottery is made for table use. It has a red body covered in a black glaze and gold relief. This Jackfield type pottery table cow creamer pitcher was bought by Lieutenant Frank Early in Austria during World War I. When mortally wounded, his brother Walter, which is Brian's maternal grandfather, was called to his bedside. Walter then brought the cow pitcher home to his mother on his return from World War I. It has so far been passed down through 4 generations of the Early family, and it has only ever been displayed and never used. So Early being Brian's mother, her side of the family, of course he's a Bradley, and it now resides in our china cabinet. Actually, Sarah's china cabinet, which we have at home with us. Funny how things go around.
So what's inside here?
Notes.
Yeah, I know, but interesting stuff, dirty stuff, what?
I could tell you, but I'm not going to.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Well, Karen, you know what, you're up, you're on, that's it. Questions on.
George, I just have a question.
Oh, question, sorry.
Or a comment. I'm so surprised it's gold in 1860s, because I wouldn't have thought they could do that.
Yeah, well, you melt gold it, right? There's lots of gold leaf done.
Yeah, I have a clock at home that is gold leaf from the 1840s. So yeah, it's quite popular. It's possible anyways at that time. Well, it looks like Karen's brought some,
Okay,
Small flags.
I don't know what I can tell you. I don't have any information on it. I just bought this at the Cummings auction a long time ago. I guess it was probably a Rob Sage auction at the Little White, what is that?
Potterville.
No, before Potterville. I mean, he had them in Schaumburg, in Bond Head, at the Bond Head, the Little White building. Anyway.
Community hall.
So yeah, so maybe somebody can tell me something about this. Anyway.
You said Cummins, was that moved off to the Cummins?
Yes. Yes.
Victor Cummins.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I hold it up.
Okay, sure, thank you. It's yeah. So it's
Oh, look at that. Oh,
we
look
could
at
eat now. And then it has these little all handmade Scotland. What else has it got? It's got, I think it's got Australia. No, Bond Head. Oh. And then Australia. Upside down, but that's okay, get the idea. And Dominion of Canada.
Oh.
And this is all.
Is there a year
it's
on that?
It's painted on there. Yeah, I don't know. So, anyway. Yeah, maybe you guys can tell me more. I mean, it's just, I think it's made out of wool. It must be, it's got all these little holes in it, so. What do you think, June? This is probably
Oh,
wool.
it feels cotton. This
No, that would be cotton, but
Oh,
this.
yes, yeah, this is, they call it bunting.
Oh, bunting.
they call it bunting?
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is from Bondhead.
Wow.
So it's very delicate, so, I don't know, I was thinking I should donate it somewhere. I don't, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you do with flags? I have three flags too, and I David got them somewhere, and I know nothing of their history. But they're kind of like that, but they're in better condition. I mean, what do you do with flags?
Does anybody know what flag that is? Is that the Ontario flag? I don't know.
It's the.
Oh, is it the Dominion flag before we have the
Yeah.
Canadian flag?
Yeah,
Canadian
Right?
flag.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Dominion of Canada flag.
So,
With the strong British connection.
yeah, maybe I should put it on display on Canada Day or something.
Well, you got that window front in Beaton.
Okay, I'll get on it. Okay, so,
Gee, but that's really a puzzle with this. Unless they were marching in some kind of parade and they were holding.
Yeah.
Weren't we still using that about 50 years ago? When did the Canadian flag just come in?
Well,
67?
67.
I was just looking
65.
at it.
Well,
64?
So I just Googled it. It says that flag is the British Red Ensign from 1707.
Oh.
Wow.
And then there's another one. Okay, so it has 2 bands of red on it, like just the way it's red and white. So I was incorrect. So the correct picture here is Civil Ensign of the United Kingdom, 1801. Is that one? Okay, would you agree that it's that one?
oh, yeah.
Did you
1801.
The phone can make you sound so smart.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I know what it is. That's great, thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Karen. Okay, we have a picture here. How about this? Okay. You know what, I can hold the picture. Okay, you can operate that.
I'm sure many of us have prized family pictures showing of the generations. So it's not particularly interested to people who don't know the people in the picture. But I am one of them.
So which one are you?
I'm this little guy here, the youngest boy.
Okay,
My cousin, couple months much younger than me. But,
so he's this one here, this guy.
Oh.
So his cousin's over there.
and that the senior, the elderly gentleman here in the upper row is my grandfather Evans, TWGHS Evans, who founded our law firm in Bradford in 1894.
That was your grandfather?
My grandfather. And there were two of his sons, my dad and my uncle, and two of my dad's sons, myself, my brother, in the firm over the years. And we're all in this picture. I was 3 years old at the time. And this. So that's Granddad, and his wife, my grandmother. My dad is here, holding my brother, and behind, he's not holding him. And his brother Brock. And my brother Tom, and here I am. The Simcoe County Historical Association gave our firm an award or recognition for long-term service to the area. This firm is still in existence. I'm the last living member of this group, Evans's. I retired, but I had two partners who had come in just a few years before I retired. And they're carrying on. It's Evans, DeVries, Higgins is the name of the firm. It, for many, many years, was Evans and Evans. So they kept the Evans name.
Wow.
And I hang around there sometimes when I feel like going out, and it gives me a destination.
Where is it?
It's on the main street of Bradford, 21 Holland Street West in Bradford.
Is that the original location or no?
Well, my grandfather had the building built in 1908. So it was about 14 years after he started his practice. He was in practice where not Bill Dikey, Peter Dikey has a jewelry shop in that location on Holland Street East, just second building east of the main Four Corners. So my grandfather didn't move very far, just half a block away. But there were two buildings referred to as blocks. And we had the Evans block. But when my grandfather built that, there were two of these two blocks of buildings and a space in between. And that he built on that space. He acquired that property. And that was 1908, and we've updated it a little bit. But we had a very nice event in October when the Historical Society came to Bradford to our office to give us an award for many years of service, I guess. But it was a really very nice event, and we have a picture there too. And,
So was it like 130 years of
130
operating?
years. And interesting fact about the Evans lawyers. Granddad practiced for 60 years.
60?
60, yeah, 60 and a half actually. And he never did retire. About a week before he died, that was the first time he hadn't been to the office for all those years. And that was his life. I remember him as a very well recognized person in the community.
Did he walk to work? Did
Yes.
He live very,
He
is the
lived
house where he lived
Yes,
still there?
it was on the south side of Holland Street. And there were no commercial properties west of there. There was a farm west of there, as I was growing up. And now, of course, it's all built up commercial.
But there, the house is still there where you live?
No.
No, oh, no.
No, it was in pretty rough shape. It was it was close to 100 years old, I think, at the time.
And no, there's no descendants that are still in the law firm? Is that
No, there
right?
aren't.
Oh.
My niece is a lawyer, and she's in practice in Toronto. But it was, and, yes?
No, I'm just thinking, there was an article in Bradford today, I'm just recalling.
Yes,
It's very
yeah.
good. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm so glad you came. This is really nice with that article, because I know we wrote you a note from the Historical Society.
Yes.
But I'm so glad you came, because this makes it very significant.
I was going to say, my grandfather practiced for 60 years. My dad practiced for 60 years. And he lived 6 more years after that. My uncle practiced for 53 years. My brother practiced just over 50 years. And then he died, and well, he didn't retire. And I practiced for 54 years. And then retired.
Slacker.
So if you put all those
Yeah.
numbers of years of service, you add up to more than a quarter of a millennium.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I'm not quite that old, but getting there. So it's not. You're welcome to come up and look at one. Many of these are. But
Well, what
I
they,
treasure that because it's my family, and I'm here to share.
yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your support over the years.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Just to ask, what are your grandfather's origins? Is he Welsh?
Pardon?
your grandfather's origin?
Origin.
Well, he grew up on a farm 3 miles north of Bradford.
Before him, where did they come from?
From Wales, my
Yeah.
great grandfather.
Whereabouts? Do you know?
I don't know. They came from Ireland, from County Cavan.
Oh.
Their ancestors had come from Wales to Ireland. I don't know why, but you might. Well, you're not. You're in another branch of the family.
Okay.
The Wilcoxes, the Jeffs. Your mother-in-law was.
Deborah Wilcox.
Well,
Wilcox, Josephine Wilcox.
yes. The Jeff's family had a farm on the 6th line of West Glenbury, just south of Longhead. And he was a cousin of my grandmother. And my grandmother's grandfather, Griffel, was the first Chief of Bradford in 1857. And this is my grandmother here, that lady. The lady behind her is my mother's mother. So, we had a few people who have been a few years, and some unfortunately not quite so long.
Mhm.
Anyway, lots of memories.
That's great, thanks. They always say practice makes perfect, and they did lots of practicing, so. Anyway,
For many more years to read that.
Tim, this one? Yeah.
Some of you may know what this is. I did not at the time when it was found.
For oil.
Oil.
See?
Yeah.
These older people know
My dad, I saw my dad tear down an old wooden barn on his farm because we were building a new metal one. And I found this, and it was of course filled with some disgusting looking liquid and about 12,000 flies and spiders. So I thought it was some sort of weird, fly trap type thing. They'd fly into the top, and get caught, and then they couldn't get out. And no, as you guys have already noticed. So I took it home, emptied it out, cleaned it out. I painted the top part here black because it was starting to rust. The inside, of course, was not rusting at all. But it is a oil bottle, I guess that's the best way of putting it, from probably the 1930s. Now the company name is Enarco, which I just did some research on the internet. It was owned by the National Refining Company in the States, who also made White Rose gasoline. So you see all these people that have gas station memorabilia, and you get these tin signs. You know, White Rose was a popular brand in Canada way back in days before I was born. But anyway, it's got a fill level here, so I don't know if this was sold pre-packaged like this, and you would just,
No.
but it was just used in the gas stations, and they would have like a drum with like a hand pump or something, and they would fill it up to the line, and
That's right.
cars in those days, well, they leaked oil like a sieve, so you had to, apparently they made it also in a quart size. This is the pint size, so that's what it is. So I just keep it in my library on top of one of the bookshelves, so it's out of the way when we get stabbed or anything. But they would fill it up with oil, and then of course, this being the spout, you just put it in your fill hole and let it drain in there automatically, similar to, well, after that they had the cans with the spout that would just get pushed into it, and then of course now we have plastic bottles. So, but that's about it. That's all I got here. So, thank you. I also noticed this, that you're making your homemade chili, you know, and you're canning it up. Run out of jars. Here's your standard mason lid. Fits perfectly, so if you run out, you know where to find one. Okay, thanks, sir.
Yeah, you'd be well lubed after that. We have an automobile book here. I guess we don't. What's... Okay, Louis?
Company that made cars. Roebuck and Sears and Roebuck. 1909 to 1912. But they didn't make any money. They didn't have a garage. They didn't have a place to sell them. When you ordered one, you send the application in and it came in a crate. So, that's the one with the tiller. Is that what you call them?
Tell her, yes.
Yeah, the tiller. Yeah, it's amazing. It was on the left side of the car. So you held the end of it and you held the post. And the women were allowed to drive them too. Anyway, and they sold, some of those cars were up to $400.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, this one here, this is not the same as that one. This one here, I taped the handle, so nobody take it off. I bought this one on Highway 27 a couple of years ago. My wife ran over. She said, "How many of those have you got?" I said, "Only 6. Anyway, so I had to put it in the car because the people that sold it to me were wondering what we're talking about. What happened? You see the slot in the end here? Anybody knows what the slot was for?
Buttons.
Buttons.
Oh.
Yeah. My mother never ironed buttons. Anyway, we figured it was for police, military, guards. Who else would iron the buttons? Underneath the buttons. Okay, any question about the Sears catalog? No law or anything?
Did those cars come assembled? You said they came in a crate. Did they come assembled or did you have to put them together yourself?
No, they don't come apart. Well, the handle comes off.
No, the
No,
cars.
that's
Cars.
Oh yeah, no, they were, well, in the crate, probably they had air in the tires. I think they were ready to go.
Louis, not last year, year before last, in 2023, Linda and I went down to the old car festival down in Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah,
And there was a 1908 Sears vehicle there, and there was another one, and it was driving along the street.
is that right?
Backing in, yes.
Yep.
An original. So,
Mr. Ford was the first one to make an electric car. Quite a few batteries.
yeah, these weren't electric though.
No, but
Yeah.
But it had gas
no,
headlights.
that's a different subject. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get you off there. The iron over here, if you check on your computer, they were $200. Maybe more.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Anybody ever seen one of those?
No.
That's why, I got it for sale for $500.
Yeah, I'll take my commission on that. Are these all yours, June? Okay. So besides June, is there anything else that anybody brought in?
Did you bring something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll go before June. June wants to be last. So, my parents used to belong to this club in Bolton. And there's a gentleman there, his name was John Evans, and he worked for A.B. Rowe. His job there was he actually made a wooden mock-up, 1-to-1 scale, that during manufacturing, what they would do is they'd put metal parts up against the wood to make sure that the curvature and everything matches properly so that the aircraft would work. So that was, well, in the 50s. So in 1958, in March, they had their first flight. And 50 years later, they had a commemorative thing that they thought maybe a couple hundred people would show up for, old employees. They just sort of put it out there. Well, there's like 3,500 people showed up. And so none of his family cared about it whatsoever. So my parents thought, you know what? Maybe my son would like something like this. So this here, you know that here is was the poster that was available in, I think it's 2008, 50 years later after the first flight. Obviously, it was signed by Zukowski, who's the first guy who was the test pilot. The other way, Jim Floyd, he was the #1 engineer on the project. The little thing in the corner, I was at the flea market, where your hand is, Andrea, and I guess somebody had a A.B. Rowe patch from CF 105, so I thought it would just add to it. So, I don't know, that's what it is. Another great Canadian accomplishment and loss at the same time. And of course, for the people that knew, what's his name? Put the pressure on June. She knows everybody. I don't think so.
Is that is here?
That's at the bottom
Yeah.
of the lake, isn't it?
That's one of the most people we had in this
Oh,
hall ever.
the guy who
That's true,
worked
but it's
here
the most meeting we ever had in a meeting, and he spoke.
lived by, on the second line. Anyways,
I'll remember.
his job there, he was in charge of experimental instrumentation, so he knew the performance and ability of this aircraft. So 2 weeks before the program was scrubbed, the aircraft 204 went 1,490 miles an hour. And a number of years later, he was talking with Zukowski, who was, flew the aircraft, knew its capability. Number 6 had the high-performance engine in it, the Iroquois, and he asked how fast would it go, and Zukowski said more than 2,000 miles an hour, which is faster than what the aircraft run right now still. Anyway, things happen.
Was it Diefenbaker who put the?
It was Diefenbaker, and according to Ron, what's Ron's last name? Ron Brighty, there we go. According to Ron Brighty, everybody says the Americans scrubbed the program. Well, that's not true. According to him, it was professors of the University of Toronto advised him that there would be no such thing as manned flights. it's all gonna be missiles and stuff like that. Well, they kind of missed out. Anyway, close. I also have at home an original 2-foot by 4-foot mechanical drawing of the arrow from A.V. Rowe, from the same time.
You mean like a blueprint thing?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's neat. Anyways,
So George, I have something to say before Jim.
okay,
If I could do an update.
yeah, come on.
Last year, John and I brought in, I don't know, for those of you who were here, we brought in an old ledger from the Tottenham General Store in Tottenham. So anyway, it's not exactly what I'm going to talk about, but from that, we spoke to Tracy, who we were looking through this old ledger from the 1800s, and it was very interesting as to the type of transactions, what people were buying, a lot of medicines and crazy stuff. So anyway, Tracy, we were trying to figure where that was, and Tracy gave us the information. So I just wanted to share that if any of you don't know this, it was very helpful. So in the Simcoe County Archives, you can look up the history of your property, and we looked up our farm. We never didn't find the one in Tottenham because we didn't have the name of it, but we looked up our farm. So it goes back to 1830. And it went all the way, we found when my grandfather bought the property, we found when my dad bought the property, and we found when my dad split ownership with my mother in 1991. So it went from was it 30, John? 30 through to 1991. My mother's record was still like there, and then I guess they've gone computerized. So I just wanted to share, like, we were so thrilled that if anybody doesn't know about this, or your kids or whoever you might know, that they can trace the roots from the property. And one of the interesting things from that is on our barn, which was built sometime in the 1860s, there is a name, Riddle, carved in it. And so we thought that that was the person who built it. But we talked to Bert Platt, and he goes, well, he was a helper, but you know, this other guy was really the barn guy. And it turns out that Riddle was one of the owners that we found on this record. So anyway, it was just kind of a nice update from this group, and thank you, Tracy, for telling us. And if anybody wants to find that information, we have an expert.
Wow, what an exciting evening. We started out with about two or three people, and we thought, gee, maybe the weather is going to prevent people from coming. So it's wonderful to see so many people, all the interesting information, and it's lots of audience participation. It's just been wonderful. So I'm here on a little different kind of situation. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
That's always my concern, because people say they can never hear me. I don't speak loudly enough. So I'm here because, as you probably know, that I like buttons. And you might wonder why, or you know, how did that come into being? So I'll just give you a little background. I know I'm only supposed to have 5 minutes,
We got time, no
but I
worries.
think we've got a bit more time. So I could probably talk about buttons till the cows come home. At any rate, David and I were at an auction sale west of Kingston, and it was a couple of collectors that lived in a wonderful old house. And it was in a big tent, and it was just really interesting. I didn't know anybody there until David spotted one of his patients. So he said, "Oh, June, I should have you meet this person, because I'd just like you to meet her." So I met her, and we had lots to talk about. And then she said, I'm going to be president of the Pioneer Button Club in Orillia. Not in Orillia, although there is a button club in Orillia. I'm going to be president of the button club in, oh dear, I'm having a bit of a little block here. So it'll come probably much later. Do you ever have that happen? You're talking about something, and you know it, and then you lose it for a bit, and then it comes back when the other person isn't there. she said, well, she said, I'm going to be president, and you don't live too far from me, and I can pick you up, and you could come and you know, see what it's like. Well, that was back in 1994, and I started out with maybe a couple of buttons, and I found out that it wasn't just the buttons themselves, but the people that collect the buttons. And this particular button club had begun in 1960. So I thought there must be something about buttons to have, you know, this organization still going. And at that time, back in 1960, people would get together in each other's homes, and the hostess would make the tea, and people would bring their lunch. And they were a studious kind of group. It wasn't just to collect a button because it's a pretty object, but because they wanted to know more about it. And in the button world, we're really lucky because we have our American neighbors. And they've been interested in buttons for a very long time, and they published a book that's just about as big as our Tecumseh history book. And our Tecumseh history book, believe it or not, weighs 18 pounds. Well, this book probably weighs close to that, and it's wonderful because it's full of colored pictures, and there's a history of the button, there's whether it's rare or not, and every once in a while there's an update, and there's another publication that'll come along so you can get an idea what some of the buttons are worth. So buttons are like any other object. They have their ups and their downs. So some years you might have to pay a lot for a button, and in other years not so much. So at these meetings, interesting things happen because people will bring buttons that they want to sell, and it's called a poke box. So sometimes it's a poke box, so you can poke around, and for 50 cents you can find a button that somebody's discarded because they don't like it very much or it's not interesting. And some people, they can amass quite an interesting number of buttons just from poking around in the box. So what happened with me was I attended one of these conventions, because button people have conventions, and they last at least 4 days. You might think, well, what could you do at a button convention in 4 days? Well, it's really easy because usually it's at a hotel, and the food is good. Accommodation is fairly reasonable, and if you share it with a buddy, well, then it doesn't cost quite so much. And the dealers come with their buttons, and the first time you go to one of these, it's just absolutely overwhelming. There's these people, there's all these buttons. Where do you start? And you don't really feel that good. And a guy said to me, one of the dealers, he said to me, you don't look very happy. And I said, well, I don't know where to begin. There's just so many wonderful things. But one thing that did happen to me, and sometimes it's just an emotional reaction. There was a card, and it had these 2 little buttons on it. They were fabric, and they were garter buttons. And it was $90. $90, that's a lot of money. But I kept, every time I was going around, I thought, I don't care, I'm going to buy those buttons, because I thought if I don't, I'll be really sorry. Well, over time, those buttons have become really quite valuable, so it's okay. But it's not so much about the money, it's about finding buttons that you really like. So I should show you one of the button cards that I really like. Tell you a little bit about it. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, George. Now you probably can't see it terribly well from where you're sitting, but I hope later, when you come up here to examine the artifacts more carefully, you'll have a good look at them. They're from the Art Deco period. And it's so far removed from the Victorian period or the Edwardian period because everything was moving with a lot of speed. And celluloid was, was the in thing to make buttons with, because You can get celluloid really to imitate almost any other material. I have a button at home that looks like the horn rim glasses. Just looks like that. And when you tap it like that, it's very hollow. And sometimes, you're not really supposed to do this, it's not recommended, but if you're really careful and you know what to do, you can prove beyond a doubt whether something is celluloid. You take a hot needle and you go like very carefully, and you hope no other button collector is watching you. But what will happen is you go in the little hole and you just gently poke that hot needle and you get this camphor smell. You know for sure, we're absolutely sure that it's celluloid. Celluloid is very flammable, obviously, if you burn it. You don't want to have an accident. But none of these buttons cost a tremendous amount. But every time I see any kind of deco button, even if I might have 5 at home, and I've forgotten I have 5 at home, maybe other collectors are like that too.
That's the mark of a collector.
No such thing as limitations.
Thanks very much. So, yeah, that was a card that I really enjoyed. In fact, I have about half a dozen cards like that at home, and I really, really like them. Now, on the other hand, sometimes I have a room at home that's my room for. It has a computer in it. It's a stand-up computer. I spend a lot of time in there. I never ever thought I'd spend so much time on a computer, but gee whiz, there's just so much you don't know unless you Google. And oh boy, when you Google, then you've got to, really do your research. So anyway, not to get too verbose about this, on the other side of this room is where my buttons are. So when I'm feeling really depressed and tired, all I got to do is turn my swivel chair around like this, and there he is. This other world just disappears, and I'm with my buttons. So this particular time, I had these buttons sitting here. They've been sitting on my desk. See, buttons that don't go on cards, most of them do. But buttons that don't go on cards just kind of hang around. I don't really know what to do with them, where to put them. So anyway, I was looking at these miscellaneous buttons, and I thought, just look at them. They've got movement to them. So I thought, I turned around, went back to my computer to find an appropriate font. I'm a big font person. Font tells me a lot about things. So here I found this really fanciful font, and I thought, wow, buttons in motion. So when you come up and look at it, you can see buttons that radiate, buttons that have a circling motion, some twist and turn, some spin, some float. Some look like they're falling, but the hologram, where do you see the hologram? The hologram is an eye, and if you look at it in a certain way, sometimes it's winking this way, and other times it's not. So there's one of these hologram buttons, kind of a sexy button. It's at the top.
Yeah, let's look at that one.
So, thanks, George. So that was a really great escape for me. It did take me quite a while actually to put it apart, but it was fun. Now, we always have a theme. Okay, we study buttons. We want to find out as much as we can about them. They're really, really interesting little objects. But sometimes for a theme, the person that was organizing this meeting, she said, well, why don't we do ugly buttons? Well, the thing about ugly buttons is really, really interesting, because initially you look at an ugly button, it's a really ugly button, really and truly. But then once you find out about it, once you find how it's made, like some of them are extruded, don't you love that word? It goes through something. Well, extruded applies, people probably know in your own lives that extruded is something that's being forced through something. Well, in this case, this plastic, polymer, which is an artificial, it's a plastic really, it gets pushed through these little holes and it makes all these twisty, curly things. So I had a lot of fun with this card. And I found these, what I thought were ugly buttons, and I thought, well, they deserve some kind of a background. So I say in this card, what is ugly? Ugly is like beauty. It is in the eyes of the beholder. It is like fashion. In one year, out the next. And I put this together. Top fashion color for 2019 was this. So there's what you can do. And all these cards are the same size. They're 9 by 12. Because in the button world, when you go to a convention, one of the really exciting things to do is to enter a card. Because there are some pretty serious judges there. And they're looking at your card, and there's you have a form that you can look at, and you can choose what categories you might like to enter, and they're really, really fussy. And if you don't adhere to exactly the way they've asked for you to put your buttons, or what kind of buttons they're looking for, they'll give you a measle. Well, that's, some of our American friends, that's devastating. They just don't like the measles. So you know what they do? At a convention, maybe before they submit their card, they quick go around to the different booths, because they'll buy a button here, they'll buy a button there, because it'll fit. It's that one button that they're missing on their card. So it really means a lot. Whereas the Canadians, well, I'm being a bit silly, really. It's not quite like that, but there is echoes of that. But with the Canadians, I'm thinking of one person in particular. She loves getting a measle, because then she finds out what was wrong. And that's her way of learning more about buttons. So honestly, guys, oh, I know, I have to tell you this. You see, you know I love talking about buttons. So this is a bit of a commercial. You can have fun with buttons. My bracelet has buttons on it. I had a lot of fun making the vest. It's got a lot of buttons on it. So buttons can be used in your projects. Louis, okay, this is a little slightly different topic. Just 1 minute, I won't be much longer. Sorry about this, but I can talk forever. And I have given a lot of button presentations to people. And I really like it, because people seem to be really interested, because they're really surprised. Because what's a button, you know? It holds your shirt together, and usually it's pretty boring, at least nowadays. So I've had a lot of fun going to, I've been to Midhurst, I've been to Oakville, I've been to a number of different places. Sometimes they're weavers and spinners, sometimes they're women's institutes. They're different groups that would like me to come and give a presentation. So I'm saying this right now because I'm throwing it out there. It's hint, hint. If you'd like a speaker who is keen on her subject, I don't have to be paid particularly, but maybe a little bit for mileage. But more important than that is, how am I going to get to some of these places, because I don't drive. So I would be needing transportation if somebody wanted me to come to one of their meetings to talk about buttons. So that's my little commercial. Thank you for your attention. Oh, sorry.
How big is the jacket for that one?
This is really important. This is really important, and thanks for reminding me. These are really special, because Louis Theriault, he knows that I collect buttons, and he said to me at the last meeting, it was in the Bradford, West Gwillimbury. They have wonderful meetings just like we do. And Louis says, "Oh, you like buttons?" And I said, "Oh, yes," and he knew that. So he showed me these buttons that he makes, and he signs them. And that's another thing. If you're a button maker and you sign your buttons, that's really important. It's an important part of its value too. And Louis has signed his buttons, and it's made from the buttonwood tree. Now, at first you think, I thought Louis was trying to put on a buttonwood tree, but no, you can Google it even. There is such a thing, but it's a sycamore. And so Louis has somehow, he can tell you about this another time, but he has acquired wood from the sycamore.
Don't worry, it didn't break.
It won't break. I think it's absolutely indestructible. I didn't do that on purpose, but it was not a bad idea. You were just on the phone floor. So Louis
Not
has...
more now. The price went up.
So Louis usually, I must admit I was slightly disappointed that Louis didn't bring one of his wonderful carvings. If some of you don't know that, Louis just, And fussy, he is so fussy. About old ways of conveyance, old farm machinery. Louis traveled all over and he's researched these, and he does like scale models. And often he needs little accessories. So he brought all these buttons to me. They must have weighed about 100 pounds. And I'm sorry, Louis, but none of them is worth anything at all. But Louis has them in little medicine jars, or like little medicine jars. Except there's a blue one, a red one. There's all these different colors. Because when he's working on these reproduction machinery and other articles, there's little people in there too. He will take the buttons and it's just the right accent. Is that right, Louis? You got it right.
Yeah, I like the hobby, that's why I gave it all to you.
Wow, it was lovely. And I thank you for doing that. But I've shared the buttons with somebody else. The big ones, but not the wooden ones. Never the wood ones.
Not the broken one either.
But I think it's pretty indestructible, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I like the wood, not the button. I'm a woodworker.
Yes. Well, it's a button that is a novelty button, and it's not really to be worn.
So, June, do you have any gold buttons? Like solid gold buttons? No?
Do you?
No, I was just wondering. Do they make them?
Well, they make buttons out of materials that look like gold. There are silver buttons, like real silver. There are buttons that have back marks on them, and back marks, by the way, anytime you do find a button that you wonder about, do turn it over and look at the back, because the back can sometimes tell you quite a lot. Sometimes the maker's name, especially military buttons, there's a lot of information on military buttons. And one of our members is super keen on collecting those. The rest of us, we're not the least bit interested. But that's okay, because she does give talks too, and she will talk about her button collection and her military buttons, and it is interesting because there's lots of documentation. You don't have to maybe search quite as hard. Any questions?
Yeah, June. In your book that you wrote, you talk about was it the Ogilvy button? Can you just tell that story?
Oh, I think I spent a whole. Did I spend a whole meeting talking about that one button? I think I did. You might wonder, all the chambers talk about one button for a whole meeting. Well, I don't know. Like in the end, I thought, well, there must be karma. There must be something that leads you to find something, and then you go. And people here have sort of hinted on it in your presentations. That something happens, like with the ledger with all the names on it, and how you can find out if you know the lot number, and you can find out more about family or people that you've known. Well, this button, Bert Platt knows that I like buttons, and he's been very, very good to me. He was at an auction sale, and there was a very large cookie tin full of buttons. And he brought them to me, and I thanked him profusely, and I was so excited. I didn't open it. And like I tell people at meetings, it's like Christmas. It's just like Christmas. Somebody gives you a box of buttons. What could be inside? So yeah, so anyway, I kept that box of buttons, and I waited until a nice sunny summer day. And I sat out on my veranda, and I thought, I'm going to open it now. So I opened it up. Uh-oh. A lot of celluloid buttons in here. And as I was telling you, celluloid gives off this gas. Well, the buttons were all sticky, and they were green. So I had a green garbage bag, and I was just going, blah. I went through every one just in case, because some of them weren't affected, because this gas doesn't affect all materials. So plop, plop, plop into this green garbage bag. And then as I was almost finished, there was this one tiny brown button, and the sun was shining on it in a certain way. And I thought, ooh, there's some letters on here, on the front of the button. I wonder what that is. Well, it was G. Ogilvy Now, I'm gonna forget what else was on that button, but it was not manufacturers, it was tailoring, no, sorry. That little part's missing, but it was really, it was G. Ogilvy, Bradford, and then there was another, maybe it was just G. Ogilvy, Bradford, that was it. Well, I thought, gee, what was going on? Because often people would have buttons to advertise what they did. So I thought, oh, I wonder, what sort of, what he was doing and why he would have these buttons. So, gosh, it's a long story. It's really very long. But what I did was I put a little bit in the local newspapers, and I said, I mentioned the button, and I said, I wonder if anybody is related, anybody knows George Ogilvy. So there were three responses that I got back, and one was a direct relative of the Ogilvy. And George Ogilvy and his wife are buried in the Bondhead Cemetery.
Oh.
And it has, when they were born, when they died, and there they are together in the cemetery, and the person that's related, her house is just a stone's throw away. So, she also had another artifact that belonged to George Ogilvy, and it was a hanger, because he was a tailor, and it was a hanger that had his George Ogilvy Taylor Bradford on this hanger. And it was the strangest looking hanger. Obviously, I couldn't get it from her because it was hers, but I did take a picture of it, so you can see this kind of weird, I had no idea how you'd even put it on like a bar to hang your trousers. It was just kind of a strange thing. So, my goodness, what else? Anyway, I spent a long time talking about this one button. Oh, yeah, because the person that owned these buttons at the auction sale, she had done some home sewing, and she had kept these buttons in this box. And there were some stories that went along with this that are just almost unbelievable. This Ogilvy, he owned, for a while, he had his business. Okay, George Ogilvy's father was a tailor, and he had his shop originally in Bondhead, and he didn't like Bondhead too well because he thought it was people that did a lot of drinking. So he decided to move quite far away, sort of in further, like where it was north, and he got involved in the community with his sons, and he had an accident. A tree fell, and it damaged his head, and his oh, this sounds so gross, but it was a true story. But his eye was kind of like it was really badly injured. It was sort of almost half not what it should be. So there was no doctor around. Oh no, it's all there, but it's harder for me to kind of keep remembering it because. Did I put that in my book?
I don't think.
Did I put George Ogilvy's button in my book?
Yes, you did. Yes.
The whole story?
Well, I don't know if it's the whole story, but it was a story about the button and how you were able to track it down to being, he had a tailor shop in Bradford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a picture of it. There was,
There's a picture of the button. Yes.
That was really wonderful. There's a picture of his shop on the main street in Bradford, and it had George Ogilvy men's furnishings and hats, everything from a well-dressed man, and it was next to one of the hotels. That was kind of neat, you get your haberdashery and then go in and have a drink of some kind. So that was part of the story too. So periodically people will will ask me something, and I think, gee, you know, I wrote about that in the book, what did I write? And I have to go back to my own book to read what I've written, because it took me 4 years to write that book, and a lot of research and a lot of thinking, and at the time I was, really concentrating. Well, when you've been away from something, there's the book, it's sitting on the table, I think, gee, you know, I wrote that book, I really wrote that book. It's got my name on it. So anyway, it's, thank you for your patience.
Thank you.